I'm Janice Hossteiger. After 3 decades in the marketing business and many years of being an entrepreneur, I've learned a thing or two about marketing. Join me as we talk about marketing, small business, and life in between. Welcome to my weekly marketing. If you have an online business, you probably are familiar with the importance of a really good sales page. It might be for an online course, a coaching program, or any big ticket item that you sell on a website. You likely also know that it takes a great deal of focus and planning to create a sales page that's effective. It needs to be aimed precisely at the transformation your ideal customer is looking for. If you've ever put one together, you know that's not an easy order. I have to confess that I'm a bit of a sales page geek. I love creating them because they unite research, psychology, writing, and design all together in a way that should optimize the page and sell your product. That's why I wanted to talk to Lynda Cathcart. Lynda is a sales page copywriter. And in this episode, she's going to share her process for how she writes fantastic sales pages for clients, and she'll answer a lot of questions about what makes them powerful. So here's my conversation with Lynda. Well, hey, Lynda, welcome to the podcast. So you are a sales page copywriter.
Yeah.
What is a sales page copywriter, and how did you get to this point?
I have an undergraduate degree from many years ago in English Lit, and it was something I could do. I could write.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went back to work after my children had grown, I ended up in copywriting. I like sales pages the most because it sort of it was very defined. You know, you had one point throughout the whole page to hit this one point. And then it was looking at, it's like, what is it? There's a poem like 20 ways of looking at a blackbird or something. It's sort of the same idea where you have to look at things in all these different views to then come back to explain why a particular product or service is useful to someone.
That is really true. I mean, you have to look at the psychology behind it. You have to look at it visually. You have to look at it from all different buyer types, from people that are maybe looking for value versus looking for something that's done quickly. I mean, you're absolutely right. There's so much complexity. So what makes them, and is that really what makes them so challenging to put together for people?
I like that, like I said, I like that it has constraints because somehow when I work within those constraints, my writing is so much better than if I had all the options available to me. I think I started out doing websites and it was just, too much going on at the same time. And getting to very specific constraints that I needed to stay within to get a point across in the most elegant and simple and accessible way. That was kind of exciting. I get off on taking words out. I like to edit. So if I can get something down to its essential pieces, I feel very good.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. When I used to have a design agency, if I would do like any kind of design, I know what you mean. Like the more constraints upon that I had on it, like it could only be, 3 colors or 2 colors or whatever. And it had to be like this and this and this. It was so much more of a challenge than if you have all the options in the world available to you. And then it becomes just overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
Yeah.
I love the fact that you edit because I used to have this phrase. I was such a nerdy teenager on my bulletin board when I was in high school, and it was like, I think it was, words are like sunbeams. The more they're condensed, the deeper they burn. And
That's good.
yeah, I didn't come up with it, but it was like, oh, I love that. That was
Really good.
But yeah, I mean, I think it's real easy to be wordy. And then, do you recommend like going back and how do you do the writing process? Do you like lay everything out and do a messy first draft, or do you
Oh,
work paragraph by paragraph?
I am a believer. They call it the shitty first draft. I think
Yeah.
that Anne Lamott has a wonderful
Yes.
book about writing, and she goes, write the really bad one, and you get that out of your system. You get the stuff down on paper, then you aren't sort of clinging to things all the time, hoping, oh, I got to remember this then and this there. But I do have a process that I follow that is it's like scaffolding basically, and I follow the process, so it helps me make sure that I don't leave any parts out. And then as I go through the process, I start putting pieces together and figuring out what fits together and what doesn't fit together, not saying the same thing twice. I don't like to read long things, and I don't like to write just to be writing. I think that turns people off. I, I've read sales pages that have gone on forever and they just say the same thing over and over, like they're fulfilling the quota of X number of words. And if it's not getting you anywhere, you don't need it. You should take it out.
Mm, yeah, yeah. And that is true. I mean, I think sales pages, our modern day sales pages came as an extension of the old sales letter back when advertisers sent out letters to people in well, the mail,
Yeah.
and they were very long. I do remember some of those from when I was a kid, just like looking at these long letters and you're thinking, who reads all of this? And I know that there are some people out there who actually do. But you're right, online, we don't read online. We skim for sure.
There's so much information. I mean, I I still get excited about the fact that if there's a word I don't know, I can click on it and I don't have to look it
Mhm.
up. The whole thing. I really, that's like totally amazing for me. But there's just so much information that you have to pick and choose what you let through your filter. And if someone's kind enough to let my information through their filter, then I
Mhm.
want to be respectful of their time, especially if it's somebody who's running a fairly large organization. They don't have time to fool around, get to the
Yeah.
point sort
Oh,
of
I
thing.
love that. I love that. So, can you break down the anatomy of an effective sales page? So, what do you have like a process or a system that you use?
Yeah, I do. I was so lucky to take a course through a woman. Her name is Danny Page, and she writes the sales page prep course. And she's just an incredibly bright, very perfectionist kind of person, which probably isn't great for her, but for students taking it, it's amazing. She actually broke down things into how you get the information, which really the first part and sometimes the longest part of writing a sales page is doing the research beforehand. And that truly, I think, is almost the most important thing. I'm a big believer in hearing the words that someone chooses to use to describe either their experience as someone who's already bought it or someone interested in buying something, or even the person who's the owner, how they talk about what they're offering. And the words mean an awful lot, because you want to, it's like using a different language. You need to come in and speak the language of other people who want to buy the same thing. And and those are the people you want to talk to. You don't want to you don't want to push something on someone who doesn't need it. So using the right language and reaching, reaching the right descriptions is just so important. And that's really my first part of the whole process. And then it's gathering the information, doing the interviews. I do phone interviews, and I do competitor interviews. I probably not much different than what you do. You take a look at what's the lay of the land,
Mhm.
and then you get an idea of where they fit into the lay of the land and what makes their clients, our customers, choose them. And that is always best coming from someone who's already chosen them.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Now you said interviews, do you actually call up customers and just have a conversation with them?
I do, but I never do that without talking to. It's not done blind. It has to be someone that the person I'm working for, the client I'm working for, sees as uh, someone who would be good for me to talk to. And I've been floored by some of the great stuff that comes out of it. I mean, just over the conversation, I take really good notes. I do um, a recording of it.
Mhm.
And then I start charting it. And sometimes there's some sticky words here and there where you'll hear over and over and over again. And you know that this is sort of a common theme throughout. And then you start being able to build a picture of what is different and special about the service or product you're offering. So yeah,
Mm.
I do interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Because you're absolutely right. When you use the same terminology that your ideal customer uses, they're going to know that it's for them, right? So they're going to say, wow, this really clicks with me. I think we've all read things where it just isn't sinking in, it's just like, yeah, this sounds like I could be interested in it, but nothing's connecting for me. So you just end up leaving and a confused mind doesn't buy. So I
That's
think that's,
exactly true.
it's
You
such an
want to get
important point.
you want to get that yeah, I feel that way exactly. That's
Yes.
what happened to me. Or I have a friend who was just saying that the other day. And that comes with bringing the personality in and the words. And I just think it makes it more interesting too. If you're reading something and you see someone say exactly something that you've said or thought about before, or they reference something, a movie that you care about, you're going to keep reading.
Yeah. So what would you have to say to somebody who maybe has a new product or service that they're offering that they don't have existing customers? Are there places that you go that you recommend? Like, do you read Facebook posts or some comments, or do you always just go right to that in-person interview?
Oh, no, I think actually exactly what you said. There's great resources out there that require a little legwork to get to, but there's Facebook is turned into like groups of people who
Yes.
have common interests. And there's so many different groups out there that you could get involved in and listen to what other people are saying. You're not going in and selling anything.
Mm.
You just would like to hear how they feel about something and make yours better, or give them something, a price point that works for them or an offer that works for them. So I do Facebook. Reddit is another place. It's a
Yes.
very strange place. Really weird. My son has helped me not be afraid of Reddit, but sometimes I get in there, I'm like, whoa. But then there's other times I've learned how to fix my car's air conditioner on Reddit. So, I mean, I have nothing bad to say. And then even if you go into um, YouTube, like the courses you're talking about putting on YouTube, you can
Mhm.
find a lot of good information there, and even the responses to what other people have said. And then
Yes.
I have my SEO um my SEO locations that I look at just to get an idea of the questions people are asking related to the subject. Um there's
Like
one.
answer the public or something like
Yes.
that? That's
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Okay, the questions, yes.
Yeah. I haven't bit the bullet yet for me to carry my own, um, SEO program like SEMrush or something like that. But down the road, that's sort of that's on my list of things to do. But I do think that's an interesting way of getting an idea of what people are looking at, where they're going, what words mean something to them, and
Yes.
making sure that the people that are attracted, that are using those words, are the people that are going to fit a particular offer. It's sort of
Right.
engineering it, because if
Mhm.
you use the wrong word, you're going to send a whole bunch of people to a place they don't want to be, and then you ruin that relationship before it's even started, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, yeah, it really, really boils down to really knowing that ideal customer before you do anything else, and that's true in any part of marketing, knowing that ideal customer, and then you know how to communicate with them, and, yeah, I love that idea. I love Reddit. I think it's kind of undervalued. I mean, I think
Mhm.
initially it was sort of like this fringe kind of place where, people would, just I don't talk, but the fact that they are so real on there, and I think just having usernames instead of their actual names, I think helps with that. And then they're not afraid to say anything or to voice an opinion about anything, makes it where you really are getting a real feel for how people think and what they feel about something for sure.
Yeah, I,
And also,
I, I agree with that. Absolutely.
And also Amazon sometimes, looking at
Yeah.
reviews. Oftentimes going on social media, I think the comments are so much more entertaining than the posts sometimes.
Yeah. I've noticed that too, and that's always been, even when I started my business, one of the things that he mentions, like, take a look at the comments. Those are sometimes the most important things, because you've got one person on one side, then you have the responses of people saying, yes, this is good, or no, this isn't, or
Yeah.
I don't understand what you're talking about. And that's the meat. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah, as long as it doesn't get ugly, which these days it
Yeah.
oftentimes is, but yeah.
It's a tough year with it
Yes,
being a lot of
election
ugly.
year.
But I think I've been very lucky. I really have had the best experience. I'm older than most of the women that I've taken the courses with, and I've found these women that are younger than I am to be so bright, and so just reevaluating how everything is set up. The fact that women have created this online world where we run it. It's not, you have to wait
Mhm.
10 years before you can even start writing any kind of copy. You can do it, these are rules we didn't make. So let's make our own place. And I love it.
Yeah, yeah. So talk to me a little bit about storytelling. Does it have a place in sales pages, and if so, how can it be incorporated?
It does. It, I think it's initially, I want to understand how the offer, the company, the owner, how this all ended up coming together. And in listening to someone's story, you usually hear their passion. And when
Mm,
they
mhm,
when they dig into that passion, that's the best. I get excited. That's actually the joy for me, because when I hear someone getting really passionate about the work they do, the difference they're seeing, how they're growing, who they're nurturing, any charities they're working with, I just think it's fantastic. So that's kind of the initial bit. But I find that when I do my interviews, that's where the stories come out with
mhm,
their clients, their customers, because I have a very specific list of questions that I kind of use as conversation starters, specific things I need to get answers to, but then I let them go. And that's what I like.
mhm,
I really like the story brand
mhm,
idea, and I try to work some of that in there as well, because I read someplace recently that there really aren't all these tales of our lives and our daily existence, our businesses. These are all things that we create in our brains so that we can remember things, or that we don't have to recognize a chair every time we walk up to a chair. We'll know what it is. But that's the stuff that makes us human. Having the story. It's like Providence. I don't know if you've ever watched what's Antiques Roadshow.
mm, mhm. Yes,
But the
love that show.
value of a product of one of the antiques is that it has what they call provenance, and that it's got a history, it's something attached to it. So if there's a letter attached to a book signed by Abraham Lincoln, well, that's a big deal. If it's just a book signed by Abraham Lincoln, it's not as much of a big deal. And I think that gives meaning to our lives. It gives meaning to the people who are sharing their personal experiences, and you honor that. That's something that was important enough that they took it into their lives, and they remembered it, and they were nice enough to share with me, and I tried to honor that. Yeah. I think there's stories. I think stories are kind of the key way of doing it. And even when you're not talking about stories, you're talking about stories. Because if I'm saying, if you're this person and this is what you want to do, then this is what this offer can do for you. And that's a story. I mean, it is a story.
So after you've done some interviews and you really identified who your ideal customer is, and you maybe gathered some stories, what next? What do you suggest people do? Do they start out with a framework, or where do they go from there?
It is, that's the research portion of it. And then it is filling in the blanks. There's certain bits of information I have to gather, make sure I have every bit of it before I can actually sit down and write. So my goal is to get information about the particular offer, what's the one line tagline that they're using now, looking at what they have now. Also,
maybe the value proposition.
Yeah, the value proposition. I was just thinking about the one I was working on right now. The transformation is really right now for me is one of the most, once I get the transformation down, the idea of this is for this particular person who starts here and they want to end up there. And if I understand that thoroughly, then that's where I start being able to put things together. So let's say I've gathered all the information. I've gotten it from the client. I've gotten it interviews. I've collected competitors' information. I've looked at their current Facebook, their social media footprint, anything they've got. And then I sit down and I start organizing things. And I actually start with the second half of the sales page first. I don't know if you were like this at school, but sometimes when there was such a big paper to do that I felt overwhelmed. Like I didn't even know where to start. And just knowing that if I could put my name and the date in the right-hand corner, at least I got that. That's one thing down. And that's why I start about halfway through filling in just the real nuts and bolts of the offer versus the touchy-feely parts that are usually towards the top of a sales page. So I'd start at the second half and get all that stuff down, make sure I understand exactly what the offer is, and then go back up to the beginning and start there again. And that seems to work really well for me.
I know there's a lot of writers that write the opening paragraph very last. Is that what you do too? Yeah. Or the headline.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I'm done either. It's sort of
right.
It's a process that I hope I get better at every time I do it. Sometimes things come easy and sometimes they don't. You have to just keep pushing.
I love that you brought up the transformation. I have a business coach that always says, nobody wants your online course. And at first you're like, okay. And he said, what they want is the transformation your online course is going to bring them.
Yes.
And that is true about absolutely anything we sell. They have to be able to visualize how their life is going to look and how it's going to be different once they have the thing that you're selling, be it a
Mhm.
course, be it coaching, photography, whatever it is. Do you feel like that needs to be really front and center? Where do you add that on the page?
That's at the first part. That's part of the last part. It's at the top of the page and the last portion that I do, the top page.
Gotcha.
Um, and like I think I'd mentioned, the transformation is very important, and that is one of the most important things before I even start writing. I do get that down before I start writing anything else. When I'm still doing the collecting of the information, how I do it is it's section and section and section, and then I fill in the information along the way. And to make my life easier, as I'm filling the information in, I'm trying to write it well. Now, I could just throw things in there and then go back through later and try to fix it, but I think it's better to do it well the first time through, and then you'll end up with a cleaner piece at the end.
Hmm. Love that. Do you ever split test pages?
No, I haven't done that. I haven't had a client request it yet, but I'd like
Okay.
to. That's on my list.
Yeah, I've often thought about that because if there's some subtle differences between a couple of markets, I don't think I've ever actually tried it, but not for an entire landing or sales page, rather. I have done it on landing pages for free downloads. I've done that. But just curious what your experience
Yeah,
has been, because it could
I
just be a subtle difference, like different images or different headlines
I've
for
seen
sure.
it
Yeah.
done on social media and I've done that for myself on social media where I'll put out a post and there'll be some subtle differences between the two. And,
Yeah.
the A/B test, but I haven't taken as far as writing a sales page, which would be interesting. It's just so much work to write a sales page
Right.
that
Yeah.
to be able to, it's almost like, what would if I think it's the best it can be, what would I change? I'd really have to think about that.
Yeah, and it would just be, and of course, anytime you test something, you want to keep it to one element at a
Mhm.
time so that you don't get really confused. So it would just be maybe a headline or an image. I guess that's what I've done with landing pages is just test the headline or the image, depending.
Have you seen a change between the images? Has that made a difference?
Yes, I have. It's
Hmm.
amazing to me because you think I got this. I know exactly what they're looking for. But yeah, and definitely in ads too. It is quite incredible the how a small change can have a big impact.
Yeah, that is
However,
really amazing.
yeah. However, if you're a small business owner and you're just starting out, unless there's like 1,000 people or so that you're looking at, it's easy to get off kilter too, because you don't want three people to like one better than the other. And you make your judgment based on a very small number of respondents. So, but I was curious whether or not you've done it and if you had some success with it. So,
That's fallen into a portion of some of the work I've done in the past with quizzes where you get profiles of people, but I haven't ever done it from the point of view of actually then going to write something specifically for each profile. But that would be really interesting.
another way I've done it with landing pages is to create something for a specific uh, uh, person, let's say person, but career. Like I'll have one that's maybe for photographers and one that might be for art directors
Mhm.
and it would be really the same download. But since I'm marketing it differently and the SEO would be different for each page, you're pulling in a different audience. So that's not really split testing. That's just make multiple versions of a page. But yeah, I was just curious
I
how
think
you handled that.
that's really smart because you can end up dirtying the water if you try to be everything to everyone at the same time. It's hard
Right.
for me to get that through my head as someone selling my services. it still is hard. It shouldn't be,
Yeah.
but it is, to just accept that not everybody's going to find me their cup of tea, nor are they going to be interested in what I'm offering, and to try
Right.
with folks.
But, yeah, focusing on the one that really is enthusiastic and is going to tell other people about you and all of that. It is hard. It's like when someone unsubscribes to your email list and you're like, oh, wait. But then you have to tell yourself, well, that's okay. That's good. They're not my person. Those aren't
Yeah.
my people. So, yeah,
It's humbling. It's
it
a
is.
thing. I went in to this thinking that I knew so much. Goodness, I've read so much all my life. I should be able to do this. And it was humbling to realize that what I thought I knew, I really didn't know. You really do have to do the testing. You do have to do the
Yes.
you have to do the research, because just because you think it's true doesn't mean everyone else does.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So what mistakes do you see? Some common mistakes that you see when you visit other people's sales pages?
I I think the first one is what I'd mentioned a bit before about feeling like you have to write to reach some sort of quota, where
Mm,
you're really not sure what the goal of a particular section is or who you're talking to. So you're just sort of copying what you've seen someone else do without understanding uh, the structure beneath it. I think that's the biggest thing I've seen. And the thing that drives me absolutely bonkers is I like when I write for there to be parallels. So if I say running, walking, swimming, I'm not going to say run, walking, swam, like it.
yes.
And because I'm in my undergrads in English, I believe in the beauty of prose, and prose can be copy. Something written well is something written well. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes that's the only place that people get access to writing, that choose to sit down, and they might not read a book. I don't know how many people read newspapers anymore, but well written is well written. And I believe things should sound good and look good and be attractive. And when I see something that's all jumbled, or it looks like the person writing it didn't really understand the thing they were writing about, if
Mm,
you can't understand it, then it's your responsibility to understand it. I mean, if that means you have to go and create uh, a map of what's going on, then you create a map. You have to be able to explain it backwards and forwards to someone else that you haven't met. And if you need to be at ground zero on it.
mm,
Um, and that's another thing that it makes me sad, because I can see the goal is to sound impressive and use big words. And
mm,
sometimes well, heck, look at the most popular or the most successful, advertising programs, and they don't use gigantic words. I mean, it's as simple as you can get it. Even the font, which I still have trouble with too, letting go of something that looks attractive as a font. But you look at Apple's font, it's nothing. It's like
mm,
popping or
mhm,
something,
mhm.
it's nothing.
Yeah.
So it's all about communicating.
Right. Yeah, that is absolutely true. So talk to me about SEO. Do you start out with, I would imagine you do the SEO research, or do you have somebody that does that for you? And then do you work with that initially, or do you kind of retrofit your copy after the fact to put in the right keywords and all of that?
I'd like to know when I'm starting. Usually I pick it out when I look at what the competitors are doing and the words that are showing up there. And I will see it when I do my interviews. That's the sticky words, the charting, all of the phrases, the quotes. I'll pick up things there. And I'll, maybe do a little bit of research to see if this is commonly used or if I'm on the right track. And then at the end, I usually it takes care of itself, quite honestly. If I write for the people that want the product, if I've done my research well, I've interviewed clients that are satisfied, or clients that aren't satisfied, and gotten an idea of, what they're looking for, what worked, what didn't work, how the words they used, then I should be able at the end to go in and take a look and say, okay, this is working, or I need to maybe move some things around, make sure I have the right keywords or key phrases in the right locations. But that's it. Most of the time it takes care of itself, to be quite honest. If I'm lucky, it takes care of itself.
Because the words that people are Googling are the words that probably your ideal customer is using anyway.
Exactly.
So it's already being integrated. Oh, that's super interesting. What do you have some tools that you recommend for people who may be just writing their first sales page and can't afford a copywriter, or just kind of going out there? Do you have some favorite books you've read or anything like that? Or do you have some tools available on your own website?
Well, what I am offering on a regular basis, I have a group of a Facebook group that for women who are encore entrepreneurs, getting back, having their business or really taking off on their own business after being able to reclaim their lives. I offer a course. It's actually just a 3-day challenge on a sales page, not a sales page, a landing page. And I think that's the best place to start. Taking on a sales page with no experience, short of buying someone's templates, I think understanding what a landing page is can be just as valuable, and probably more valuable, than trying to copy somebody else's work. It takes a lot of effort. So what I do is I have a 3-day challenge. I ask the students to come in and bring something that's not working for them, or if they don't understand anything about sales pages, we start from there and we start talking about it. And the goal is, by the time we get through 3 days, they have a landing page that's successful for them. Something that is ready to go or near ready to go, and they're feeling pretty good about it. And once you get that under your belt, then you can start maybe shooting for a sales page, is what I'd recommend.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because it is really hard. And even when you buy a template, you don't want to speak in other people's language either. It needs to be authentic, a blend between your own brand and your ideal customer. So it really does require a lot of really thought and planning and that sort of thing. So I love that you are doing that. And I will put a link to that in the show notes.
Would be lovely.
So I have learned a lot today. Thank you so much, Lynda, for being here. I look forward to seeing the sales pages that people create once listening to this.
Yeah, I'd be happy to get to know some of the people who listen to your wonderful podcast. If they're interested in learning more about creating a landing page, it's no muss, no fuss. Ask all the weird questions you want. There's no bad questions. I'd much rather somebody walk away feeling good about themselves and feeling confident in where they're going moving forward. But this has been great. I do appreciate this so much.
Sounds perfect. Well, thank you for being here. I must tell you, I love to hear how much time Lynda spent on her research before writing a single word, and that she went to the customer first to get their own words. That is powerful stuff. To learn more about anything we talked about today, including Lynda's 3-day Great Landing Page Challenge, visit myweeklymarketing.com/66. That's episode 66. Thank you so much for joining me today. As always, if you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.